Maya Johnson stepped off the airport shuttle with a calm sense of purpose. The early morning sky was painted in soft pastels, rosy pinks, and pale blues stretching across the horizon. She inhaled deeply, enjoying the cool air that carried the faint scent of jet fuel and fresh coffee from nearby concession stands. Today was an important day. She was here to conduct a routine inspection of Skylink Airport's security procedures. As a federal aviation regulator, her work kept travelers safe. But right now, she was just another person blending into the bustling crowd of early commuters, clad in a neatly pressed navy blazer over a simple white blouse. Maya looked professional, but approachable. Her dark curls were pinned back in a low bun, and a small silver pendant rested at her collarbone. Strapped to her shoulder was a leather organizer, its compartments filled with inspection forms, pens, and her official Federal Aviation Administration badge. She carried herself with quiet confidence, her steps steady as she approached the airport terminal entrance. Inside, the terminal buzzed with activity. Travelers hurried to ticket counters, clutching coffee cups. Families gathered around digital flight boards plotting their next gate, and airport staff moved methodically through the crowd. Maya checked the board. Flight 247 to Denver, Gate A12, boarding in 15 minutes. She smiled to herself. She always liked arriving early. It gave her time to observe procedures in action before the rush. Walking toward the gate area, Maya slipped her phone into her blazer pocket and unclasped her organizer. She retrieved her driver's license and her FAA badge, slipping them both into the clear pocket of a simple black document holder she knew that during inspection she would need to show her credentials multiple times, and she preferred being organized. Taking a moment, she reviewed the checklist for today's inspection, mentally noting the criteria for ID verification, security screening, and customer service. At the glass doors leading to Gate A12, she joined a short line of passengers. A young couple laughed quietly behind her, debating whether to treat themselves to pretzels or chips. A businessman to her right tapped away on his laptop, headphones in place, seemingly unaware of the world around him. Maya shifted her weight from one foot to the other, polite but reserved, her dark eyes flowing over each detail of the space. She observed how the gate agent's podium was arranged. 2 piles of boarding passes, a stack of water bottles, a hand sanitizer dispenser, and a small sign reminding travelers to have IDs ready. When the line moved forward, Maya stepped up to the counter. The gate agent, Tom Reed, looked like he had been up since dawn. His uniform was crisp, but dark circles underneath his eyes hinted at fatigue. He glanced at Maya's document holder and turned his attention back to the next boarding pass in line. There was no polite greeting, no good morning, just the quick scan of a boarding pass. Maya slid her holder across the counter with a gentle good morning. Tom blinked, as if surprised to realize someone was speaking to him. Without lifting his gaze, he reached forward, took Maya's license from the pocket, flipped it in his hand, and then, casually, almost carelessly, tossed it onto the floor. The small rectangle hit the linoleum with a soft clatter, then slid. Once before coming to rest face down near the base of the counter, for a moment, time seemed to slow. Maya felt her breath catch in her throat. She watched her license slip out of Tom's hand as if it were an unimportant scrap of paper. A sudden flush of heat crept up her cheeks, and for an instant she wondered if others had seen. Around, the young couple was talking in hushed tones. The businessman tapped on the keyboard, oblivious. A child down the line pointed at a screen, blinking in curiosity. No one made a move to help. Maya carefully knelt down, smoothing her skirt. Beneath her, she reached out, picked up the license, and examined it. There were tiny scuff marks from the floor. Her heart pounded, but she reminded herself to stay calm. She steadied her breathing, lifted her badge from the organizer, and gently dusted both pieces of plastic with her fingertips. Then she straightened, slipping the documents back into her holder. Tom never looked down. Without apology or a single word, he continued processing other travelers. He scanned their boarding passes, compared them to IDs, his movements efficient, routine, unfeeling. Maya felt a deep ache of humiliation, and yet she remembered her training. She had seen this kind of behavior before, an assumption, a snap, judgment, a moment where someone decided she was less worthy of respect. It fueled her determination to handle the situation with dignity. She placed the document holder back on the counter, fanned open so that her badge was clearly visible under the counter's light. Then she said softly, "Sir, I believe my ID was dropped." Tom's head snapped up. He looked surprised, as though he had not realized what he had done. His eyes flicked to Maya's badge, the familiar seal of the FAA beneath her name. Recognition dawned on his face. For a moment, he seemed lost for words. His lips parted and then closed, as though he were searching for an apology that would not come easily. Maya held his gaze, measured and calm, her chest still rising and falling. In steady breaths, she did not smile, but neither did she glare. She simply waited for him to respond. He picked up her ID and her badge, placing them gently on the counter before retracting his hand as if they were hot coals. "I'm sorry," he mumbled, eyes flicking away. His voice was low. It lacked conviction, but it was a start. Maya inclined her head slightly, acknowledging the apology. But the lingering tension in the air reminded her that words alone would not change the moment. "I am conducting an inspection on behalf of the FAA," Maya said, her voice calm and clear. "My badge is here. Before we proceed, I would like to know your name and who supervises this gate." Tom swallowed hard. "Tom Reed," he said, his tone flat. "My supervisor is Linda Chavez." Maya nodded. She slid her organizer off her shoulder, unzipped a compartment, and removed a small notepad and a pen. She wrote down his name and his supervisor's name in neat letters. Every action was deliberate. She was building a record, a clear sequence of events. Tom shifted uncomfortably as passengers behind her shuffled forward, watching but silent. A few minutes later, Linda Chavez arrived. Maya watched the gate manager approach. A woman in her 40s with dark hair pulled into a tight ponytail. Linda's expression was hard to read, professional, guarded. Maya introduced herself, handed over her badge, and briefly explained that her ID had been tossed aside. Linda glanced at the badge, then at Tom. The surprise on her face was unmistakable. She turned to Tom and asked, "Is this true?" Tom's shoulders slumped. He muttered, I didn't look. I'm sorry." Maya interjected gently. "I understand mistakes happen, but I would appreciate a formal apology and assurance this will not happen again. It's a simple act of respect can go a long way." Linda's features softened. She looked from Maya to her employee, then back again. "You're right," she said. "I apologize for my agent's behavior. We will make sure this does not happen again." She turned to Tom. "We'll schedule a customer service and sensitivity training session next week." Tom nodded, barely meeting Maya's eyes. Linda offered Maya a sincere apology, shook her hand, and promised to follow up. Maya accepted, thanked her, and tucked the notepad away. She felt a cautious relief. The incident had not gone unnoticed. An action would be taken. With her credentials back in order and respect restored, Maya moved toward the waiting area. She took a moment to breathe deeply, feeling the familiar surge of purpose she experienced on inspection days. Everywhere she looked, she saw people moving through the airport, families embarking on vacations, business travelers rushing to meetings, friends greeting one another with warm embraces. Airports were crossroads of stories, full of life's big moments and small routines. Carrying her organizer close, Maya reflected on what had just happened. It was a sobering reminder that bias and disrespect could appear in the simplest gestures, and yet she also felt hopeful by standing up calmly. She had not only reclaimed her own dignity, but had prompted the airport to improve its service. In her role, small changes could ripple outward, making travel safer and more respectful for everyone. She found an empty seat near the window. Folding her legs beneath her, she opened her organizer and checked her checklist. Security screening procedures, ID verifications, staff interviews, each item would get her attention. But first, she allowed herself a quiet moment of satisfaction. She had turned a moment of misjudgment into an opportunity for learning and growth. As she prepared to begin her inspection, Maya glanced out at the runway below. The morning sun cast long shadows across the tarmac, where planes gleamed like silver arrows. Soon, she would board Flight 247 to Denver and continue her day's work. But for now, she simply sat, calm and ready, confident that her quiet determination would help make Skylink Airport a better place for all travelers. Maya stood quietly at the side of the gate, her ID now safely tucked away in her organizer. But inside her, a wave of emotions swirled: shock, embarrassment, confusion, and a slow-burning sadness that she didn't want to admit. What had just happened didn't make sense to her, not because it was new, but because it had happened too many times before. People not seeing her for who she was. People judging her at first glance. People treating her as if she didn't belong. She took a deep breath and slowly let it out. Passengers continued to walk past her, some glancing her way, others ignoring her completely. A few had seen what happened. She had noticed one elderly woman frown in disapproval when Tom dropped her ID. A teenage boy nearby had raised his eyebrows but said nothing. And then there were those who looked directly at her and looked away just as fast, pretending not to notice. Maya wasn't surprised. Most people don't want to get involved. Most people just want to get to their destination. But even so, it hurt. Not just the action itself, but the silence that followed. That silence said everything. It said, "This isn't my business." It said, "You don't matter enough." It said, "Move along." As she leaned against a wall and tried to calm herself, Maya thought back to her training days at the Federal Aviation Administration. She remembered how passionate she had been when she got accepted. The idea of being part of something bigger than herself. The thought that she could help protect passengers and ensure fairness across the skies. She had studied hard, worked late nights, gone through tough inspections herself, learning every little rule, every detail, every expectation. And now, here she was, not as a beginner, not as an intern, yet as a full-time Federal Aviation Regulator. On a real inspection mission, her job was serious, and her badge held real power. She had earned every bit of it. Yet in that one moment, Tom Reed had treated her like she was invisible. She sat down quietly on one of the nearby chairs. Her hands rested in her lap, still holding the edges of her leather organizer. She didn't want to cry. Not here, not now. But the sting in her chest refused to go away. The sound of announcements echoed above flight numbers, boarding calls, paging passengers. Maya tried to focus on those sounds, just to distract her thoughts. But no matter how hard she tried, her mind returned to that one moment. The ID flying through the air, landing face down on the floor. It played in her mind like a slow-motion video. She could still feel the eyes of strangers on her back as she picked it up. She wondered, had Tom done this before? Is this just a habit, careless and quick? Or was it something else? Something about the way he looked at her, then looked away, pretending not to see. Maya wasn't someone who jumped to conclusions. Her job had taught her to be fair, to observe, to assess. She didn't believe in accusing someone without understanding the full picture. But she also believed in patterns, and this one felt far too familiar. She had felt it at conferences where people assumed she was an assistant instead of the lead. Inspector. She had felt it during hotel check-ins, when front desk staff asked if she was there to visit someone instead of stay. She had even felt it during calls when people spoke to her like she wasn't in charge. Being young, being a woman, being black, each part of her identity brought assumptions. But together, they made people forget to show her the respect she deserved. Still, Maya had never let those experiences stop her. If anything, they made her stronger. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her colleague Derek, who was scheduled to meet her later in Denver. Derek, "Hey Maya. Everything good at Skylink? Let me know if you need anything on my end." She stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, "Maya, yes, I'm okay. Just had a little moment at the gate. We'll fill you in later." She paused before hitting send. Then she added another line, "Maya, thanks for checking in." Maya put her phone away and looked out at the tarmac. A large jet was slowly pulling away from the terminal, its wings gleaming in the sunlight.
Oh!
Watching the movement of the plane, gave her a sense of calm. Flying had always fascinated her. God. It reminded her of freedom, of movement, of progress. No matter what happened on the ground, the skies always felt open. Just then, a little girl in pink sneakers walked past Maya with her mother. The girl looked up at Maya and gave a small smile. Maya smiled back. That small, innocent gesture warmed her heart more than she expected. She sat up straighter. No, she wouldn't let this ruin her day. She had work to do. Important work. She was here to inspect how the staff treated passengers, and now she had witnessed something firsthand. Not just the ID incident, but also how the crowd reacted or didn't react. That, too, was part of her observation. She decided to write it down. Maya pulled her notebook from her bag and flipped to a clean page. She titled it, Gate A12 Incident Observation. With a steady hand, she began writing a detailed account of what happened, from the moment she approached the counter to the exact way Tom had handled her ID. She described the expressions, the silence of bystanders, and even how the situation had made her feel. She didn't write it with anger. She wrote it with clarity. This wasn't about revenge. It was about change. She had learned over time that true change didn't come from shouting. It came from documentation, from speaking up in the right places, from showing people the impact of their actions and giving them a chance to do better. That was her mission, to help make aviation fair and safe, not just technically, but emotionally too. As she wrote, time passed quickly. Soon, the gate agent called out the first boarding group. Maya closed her notebook and stood. She felt lighter, more focused. She had taken control of the moment. And now she would carry that energy forward. Walking back toward the gate, she noticed Tom wasn't at the counter anymore. Another agent had taken over. Maya didn't know where he had gone, and she didn't need to. She had said what she needed to say. The rest was up to him and his supervisors. As the boarding line grew shorter, Maya waited her turn. She noticed the people around her, again the same ones from before. They seemed more aware now. One woman gave Maya a small nod, almost like an unspoken apology for not stepping in earlier. Maya returned the nod gently. She didn't need anyone to feel guilty. She just wanted them to remember. Finally, it was her turn to board. She handed her boarding pass to the new agent, who smiled warmly. "Have a great flight, Ms. Johnson," the agent said. "Thank you," Maya replied, smiling back. As she walked down the jet bridge, Maya felt her strength return with every step. The ID incident still echoed in her memory, but it no longer controlled her. She had faced it, documented it, and turned it into something meaningful. She was more than what people assumed. It's more than her appearance, more than a badge. She was a woman who stood with grace, even when the world tried to push her down. And she knew this was only the beginning of a much larger story. ChatGPT said. Maya stood silently by the window of the gate area, watching as sunlight spilled across the airport floor. The moment still sat heavy in her chest. But she wasn't someone who let things break her spirit. She believed in calm action, not loud anger. She had learned a long time ago that quiet strength could shake walls. She held her badge gently in her hand, the shiny gold of the FAA seal catching the light. After a moment of stillness, she walked back to the counter with slow, purposeful steps. The same gate agent, Tom, was still there, looked up and blinked. When he saw her return, his eyes briefly landed on her badge this time, clearly visible and glowing under the fluorescent lights. Maya didn't speak in a loud voice. She didn't need to. She placed her badge holder on the counter, opened it slightly, and said firmly but politely, "Sir, that's my ID." Tom stared at the badge and then at her. His expression changed in an instant, from disinterest to confusion, then to realization. He had not recognized her position before. Now he understood. Without saying anything, he quickly reached forward, picked up the ID from her document holder, and returned it with slightly trembling hands. There was no apology, no explanation, just a quiet handoff and a face trying to act like nothing had happened. But Maya wasn't here for an argument. She wasn't looking to cause a scene. What she wanted was accountability, just a simple moment of honesty and responsibility. She had faced far worse in her journey and always kept her balance. She looked at Tom calmly and said, "May I have your full name, please, and the contact. Information of your supervisor? Her tone was polite, but firm like someone who knew her rights and expected a fair answer. Tom opened his mouth, hesitated, then replied. Tom read, "Supervisor's name is Linda Chavez." He didn't make eye contact. Maya nodded, then took out a small notepad from her organizer and wrote the names down carefully. But I'm so win da 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 ra da ba da 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 I da 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 I da 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 I da 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 I da ra da da sa ba da ra da ra ra da way I ra dra wa dra da dra wa da dra da 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 what was so she said just as softly. I will wait here until I can speak with your supervisor. There was a long silence between them, filled only by the sound of luggage wheels rolling by and the boarding announcements echoing over the speakers. Tom finally said, "I'll go get her," walked away without another word, his steps quicker than before. Maya stood near the counter, badge still in her hand. She didn't look angry, she looked steady. A few passengers nearby had started to notice that something was going on. A middle-aged man gave her a curious glance, and a woman in a green sweater whispered something to her teenage daughter. Still no one said anything out loud. As Maya waited, she reflected on her decision to speak up. Many people would have stayed silent. Many people would have walked away, hurt and unseen. But Maya knew that silence didn't help the next person. She stayed quiet. The next young woman, perhaps one without a badge, might be treated even worse. Thought gave her courage. A few minutes later, a woman in a navy blue blazer appeared, walking briskly toward the gate. Her ID badge was clipped to her belt, and her face looked serious but professional. This was Linda Chavez, the supervisor. "Good morning," Linda said, her voice calm but curious. "I'm Linda. I understand you requested to speak with me?" Maya nodded and extended her hand. "Yes, thank you for coming. I'm Maya Johnson. I'm with the Federal Aviation Administration. I'm conducting a scheduled inspection today at Skylink." Linda's eyebrows rose slightly as she saw the badge. "Oh," she said softly, clearly surprised. She took the badge and looked at it closely, reading the title beneath Maya's name. Her tone shifted quickly. "I apologize, Ms. Johnson. What seems to be the issue?" Maya explained everything clearly and respectfully, how her ID had been dropped on the floor, how it was returned without a word, and how the treatment felt not only disrespectful, but dismissive. Linda listened without interrupting. She nodded a few times, then looked over her shoulder as Tom returned to the counter, clearly nervous. "Tom," Linda said gently but firmly, "can you confirm what Ms. Johnson described?" Tom looked at the floor. "Yeah," he mumbled. "I wasn't paying attention. I didn't know she was with the FAA." Linda didn't raise her voice. Instead, she turned to Maya. "Ms. Johnson, I am truly sorry for what happened. This is not the level of professionalism we expect from our team. We take customer service on respect very seriously." Maya appreciated the response. She could see Linda meant what she said. Still, she believed that words should be followed by actions. "I understand mistakes happen," Maya said. "But this wasn't just a mistake. It was a moment that showed a lack of care and attention. I believe it's important your staff understand how these moments can impact people." Linda nodded. "Again, you're absolutely right. I'll be reporting this incident to the training manager today. I'll schedule a refresher course on customer service and sensitivity. And I will personally speak with Tom about how to handle identification properly and treat every traveler with respect." Tom finally looked up. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice quiet. "I wasn't trying to be rude. I didn't mean anything by it." Maya didn't smile, but she gave a respectful nod. "I accept your apology, but I hope you'll remember this. the next time someone hands you their ID. He nodded slowly. Linda added, "We're also going to review how we train new agents. This shouldn't have happened, and we want to make sure it doesn't happen again." Maya thanked them both and made a note of their promises in her notebook. She didn't want revenge. She wanted change. As the conversation wrapped up, Linda asked if Maya needed anything else. "No," Maya said. "I'll continue with my inspection. I appreciate your time." Linda offered a final handshake, and Tom returned to his duties with a more serious expression than before. Maya stepped away from the gate counter and walked slowly toward a quieter corner of the terminal. She sat down and allowed herself a moment to breathe. The hardest part of speaking up wasn't always the words, it was the courage to stay calm when emotions ran high. But she had done it. Looking out the window again, Maya saw another plane taxiing along the runway, preparing for takeoff. It reminded her why she did this job. It wasn't just about paperwork. It wasn't just about safety checklists. It was about people. People who fly every day. People who deserve to be treated fairly. She remembered her first day at the FAA. When a senior inspector told her, sometimes the real inspection isn't the machines, it's the mindset. That memory brought a faint smile to her face. Today she had seen that mindset up close. And she had also taken steps to correct it. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from her mentor, an older inspector named Gloria. "Gloria, remember, Maya change doesn't always come loudly. Sometimes it comes when someone brave enough speaks calmly in the middle of the storm." Maya smiled softly, her heart a little lighter. She replied, "Maya had a storm this morning. I didn't raise my voice, but I stood my ground." Gloria. That's leadership. Proud of you." As the boarding call for her flight came over the speaker, Maya stood up, checked her documents one last time, and walked toward the gate with quiet strength. No one in the crowd knew what she had just experienced. But that didn't matter. She knew. And she knew she had done the right thing. Her job was far from over. But in that one morning, Maya had reminded an entire gate crew that every traveler matters and that dignity should never be an option. It should be the rule. As Maya boarded her flight to Denver, her thoughts were still fresh with the conversation at the gate. She had stayed calm. She had spoken with honesty and clarity. She had made sure that both the agent and the supervisor understood why the moment mattered. But deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. Her role as a federal aviation regulator was not just about writing reports or checking off boxes. It was about improving the system for everyone. She had promised herself when she joined the FAA that she would speak up when something wasn't right. And today, she had done exactly that. The plane took off smoothly. Maya leaned back in her seat and looked out of the small window. The clouds outside floated like cotton, soft and peaceful. She found comfort in the quiet hum of the engines. As the ground grew smaller beneath her, so did the weight of the morning's event. She let herself rest for a short while, knowing there was more work ahead. 2 hours later, the plane touched down in Denver. Maya collected her bag and stepped off the aircraft with the same quiet confidence she always carried. She met her colleague, Derek, in the terminal. Derek was an experienced inspector, older than Maya, with a kind face and a calm voice. He immediately noticed the look in her eyes. "Everything okay?" he asked, as they began walking toward the inspection office. Maya hesitated, then nodded slowly. "There was an incident at the gate back in Skylink," she said. "I'll tell you more during our debrief." Derek didn't press her for details. He just gave a supportive nod. That was one thing Maya appreciated about him. He always gave her space to speak on her terms. They spent the next 2 hours reviewing safety protocols at Denver Airport. They checked security lines, verified ID processes, and observed passenger-staff interactions. Everything was well organized. Staff members were respectful, and the flow of travelers was smooth. Maya took detailed notes, but her mind kept going. Back to what had happened earlier. After they wrapped up the inspection, Derek invited Maya to a nearby coffee shop in the terminal to relax and discuss their findings. They found a quiet corner table by the window. "All right," Derek said. "Gently, tell me what happened this morning." Maya took a breath and told him the full story from the moment she handed her ID to the gate agent to the moment the supervisor promised to address the issue. She shared every detail, including how it made her feel. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't dramatize it, she just told the truth. Derek listened carefully, his expression serious. When she finished, he sipped his coffee and spoke slowly. That wasn't just unprofessional, he said. That was a missed opportunity by someone who should have known better. I'm proud of how you handled it, Maya. Thank you, she replied quietly. I didn't want to cause a scene, but I also couldn't ignore it. You didn't cause a scene, Derek said. You handled it with class. You showed what leadership looks like even when it's uncomfortable. Maya smiled faintly. It meant a lot to hear that from someone like him. I just wish it didn't happen so. Often, she added. Derek nodded slowly. It's not fair. But people don't always see the full picture. That's why it's important we do. It's our job not just inspecting equipment, but helping people grow. Maya looked down at her coffee. I asked the supervisor too. Make sure the team gets proper training, not just on checking IDs, but on how to treat people with basic respect. That's the right move, Derek agreed. You didn't just react, you helped them see a better way. After finishing their drinks, they walked back toward the exit. Maya felt stronger now. Sharing her story had helped. She felt less alone. Later that evening, back in her hotel room, Maya opened her laptop to write her official report. She included all the details of the Denver inspection, as expected. But then she created a new section at the bottom labeled Additional. Observation, Skylink Airport, she wrote. During boarding at Gate A12, an agent handled my identification in a disrespectful manner. Without properly checking, the agent tossed my ID onto the floor and continued processing other passengers. This occurred despite me clearly presenting both a government-issued ID and FAA credentials. After requesting to speak with a supervisor, I explained the incident professionally. The supervisor responded respectfully and assured me that corrective training would follow. I recommend a follow-up visit in the coming months to verify improvements in gate staff behavior and professionalism. Maya read over her words. They were fair, direct, and focused on solutions. She didn't name Tom to shame him, but to make sure that change would happen. She didn't write from a place of anger, but from purpose. She submitted the report and closed her laptop. The next morning, something unexpected happened. While checking her email, she saw a message from Linda Chavez, the supervisor from the gate. Subject: Follow-up and thanks, dear Miss Johnson. I wanted to thank you again for the way you handled the situation yesterday. After your departure, I spoke with the entire gate team and shared the importance of treating all passengers and professionals like yourself with care and dignity. We've scheduled mandatory training sessions starting next week, focused on customer interaction and awareness. I truly believe your feedback opened many eyes, and I appreciate your professionalism throughout the experience. Respectfully, Linda Chavez, Gate Supervisor, Skylink Airport. Maya read the email twice. A gentle smile formed on her face. This was what she hoped for. Not just an apology, but action. Real steps being taken to fix something that had been broken. Even if only in a small way. She forwarded the email to Derek with a note. Looks like we planted a seed, he replied within minutes. Told you. Grace changes more than anger ever could. Over the next few days, the story quietly spread among Maya's team at the FAA. A few other inspectors reached out to her privately, saying they had been in similar situations but hadn't known how to respond. One young inspector wrote, I want to learn how to speak up like you did? Maya replied, start with calm, add truth, and always choose dignity. By the end of the week, her experience had become a quiet example, not because she shouted, but because she stood tall. Her story reminded people in her field that every interaction, no matter how small, could carry deep meaning. She hadn't needed to demand respect with force. She earned it with her presence. And more importantly, she used that moment to teach, not just correct. That was leadership in its purest form. From then on, every time Maya walked through an airport, she carried that moment with her, not as a burden, but as a reminder that real change doesn't always need to be loud. Sometimes, it just needs to be real. Maya sat quietly on the plane, ready to leave Denver and return home. The day had been long, filled with inspections, meetings, and important conversations. Yet her mind kept going back to the incident at Skylink Airport, the moment when the gate agent had dropped her ID on the floor without care. It was a small action, but it spoke loudly about respect and how people see one another. She thought about how her calm response had changed the situation. She had chosen not to get angry or lash out. Instead, she had stood firm, spoken clearly, and made sure her voice was heard. That decision had sparked something important. Promise from the airport's staff to do better. Maya knew that this one moment wasn't just about her. It was about everyone who traveled through airports every day. People who deserved kindness and fairness, no matter their age, race, or job title. She hoped that by sharing her story and standing up, she could help build a safer, more respectful environment for all. As the plane soared through the sky, Maya pulled out her notebook again. She wrote about what she had learned from the experience. She noted that respect wasn't just a feeling, it was an action. It was the way people treated one another when no one was watching. It was the kindness shown in small moments, like handing someone their ID gently or saying please and thank you. It was about seeing the person, not just the task. She remembered the smiles she had seen throughout the day. The little girl in pink sneakers, the woman who nodded in support, even the moments when strangers noticed but didn't speak. Change takes time, she thought, but every step counts. Maya also reflected on her own journey. Being a federal aviation regulator was more than a job. It was a responsibility. She was part of a system that affected millions of people. Her work helped keep the skies safe, but it also helped remind people of their shared humanity. She thought about the future. She would continue her inspections, writing reports, and making recommendations. But she would also continue to share her story, hoping it would inspire others to speak up calmly when they faced unfairness. She believed that one person's courage could ripple out and touch many lives. Back at home, Maya received messages from friends and colleagues praising her courage. Some said they had faced similar moments, but had stayed silent. Maya encouraged them gently, telling them that speaking up didn't have to be loud or confrontational. It could be quiet, clear, and full of grace. The airport, where the incident happened, soon announced new training programs for all staff. Focusing on respect and customer care, Maya's supervisors at the FAA promised to follow up and make sure the changes were real and lasting. Maya began to see the impact of her actions. During later visits to airports, she noticed staff treating travelers with more care. She heard stories from other inspectors about how her story had encouraged them to stand up for themselves and others. Maya knew there would always be challenges. Bias and unfairness didn't disappear overnight, but she had hope. Hope that by choosing respect, calm, and honesty, people could make a difference. As the plane began its descent, Maya looked out. The window at the landscape below, she felt a deep sense of peace. The journey wasn't just about the miles traveled, it was about the steps taken to make the world a little better. She closed her notebook and smiled softly. The sky stretched wide and open, full of possibility, and so was she. Ready to continue her work, ready to stand tall, and ready to inspire change one small moment at a time.